Happy Monday. My name is Scott Williamson. I'm the VP of Product Management. Happy to host today's product group conversation. It looks like there's one question in there. Sid, over to you.
Thanks, Scott. Slide number 9, we showed maturity, and it has it's very far out, like it's up to 2023. And at the end, there's some very steep curve, like Mount Everest right there. You think, what's that about? And should we go that far out? I'm not sure we have visibility that far out.
That's a great question. I think this is a function of Mark was looking ahead at 2023. We have this goal of 50% of our categories being lovable by 2023. So we polled all the directors about essentially which ones must, or which ones do we really want to invest to make sure. And so we have this moment in 2023 where a ton of them become lovable, and there isn't really a path to that. And so perhaps we shouldn't peg this chart that far in advance, but I think that's what created that long-term bump.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think in a chart you can show one thing. In this case, I think we should show our forecast and then maybe have a line below the chart, like, hey, these are the ones.
Okay.
I want to get that many to this stage, but I think right now we're losing a bit of fidelity in.
Okay.
And the whole idea of the maturity, I think, is to make sure we have something realistic to show our customers, and it looks a bit unrealistic due to that bump.
That's a great point. I'll find another way to work with Mark on projecting which ones we want to make sure we want to invest in to be lovable, and we'll have this reflect our plan.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Might be a short one.
So on slide 12, we talk about eventing system to power custom reporting.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, maybe a bit prescriptive on the solution. The problem is that large customers, and we heard this in spades at the CAB, they want us to make the raw data, the raw events available from our system so that they can pipe them into their data warehouse. They typically have their own dashboarding systems and their own data warehouse, and they want to consolidate the data from our system with many of the other systems they're running. And this was one of the primary solutions that was recommended was, hey, just make the events available to us. We'll harvest them and pull them into our own system. So it might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit on how we might do that, but that's the gist behind the line.
Yeah, I think it's really important not to have that technical solution in there right now. All they're asking for is, hey, we have audit logs, they're great, but your API is not complete, and we can't filter properly. So I think let's take that step, and we'll learn more. After that, we will have learned.
Yep, good one. Maybe we could just change it to say power custom reporting or something like that.
Yeah, if you click on the Epic, it should be less prescriptive as far as the solution. And then we plan to talk to a number of the CAB customers in more detail in December, coming up here, or not next week, but the week after. And then we'll continue to do some more customer interviews from that point forward to just get a better handle on what people want. In the CAB meeting, it was sort of all over the board, webhooks for everything, Kafka message bus, all sorts of stuff. And so I think we want to try and do a little more validation here before we do anything.
Yeah, and I think there were a whole lot of underlying customer needs that all got bundled up in the same thing, but it's very important to disentangle them. And I think they want to take reporting into their own hands, because the reporting in GitLab isn't good enough. It's not just that. There's a section of customers that say GitLab is only part of the solution, but there's also a section of customers that says GitLab is my one and only solution, and your reporting isn't good enough. So then if we invest all our time in getting more events out of GitLab, we might not even be doing those people a service, because we're basically putting the load the workload on them. Maybe we should be fixing it.
Yeah, I think we definitely don't want to lose sight of that, which is part of the benefit of having this in the ecosystem group, in the sense that the analytics team is still fully funded and still fully able to proceed on their own vision and delivery stream, if that makes sense. So by doing this, we aren't slowing that effort down, because that's part of a different group's charter. And I totally agree. We just need to try and figure out here how much investment do we have to make based on what people actually need, and whether having a polling based system on the audit log API is good, or whether we should maybe have a next iteration to do some kind of like WebSocket type push notification service on that. But yeah, we'll do some more digging here on both the problems that people want to use this to solve, as well as how we should solve it in a boring iterative way.
Yeah, we never had a part of GitLab that became a success that we didn't use ourselves. So let's make sure that we don't lose track of what we need ourselves, and almost prioritize that, because if we're using the product ourselves, we tend to innovate a lot faster.
If I may add to this, the audit log, for example, in admin area, it didn't have filters by date up until a month ago. And in general, our admin area is pretty behind in a way of features and tools. And I think that's also, yeah, as Sid mentioned, a part of the problem. I mean, what is the use of GitLab UI for audit logs if you can't filter it by any criteria, just a list with, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 pages. So while we do more API, I think we should also take a look in the admin area. And I feel like in general, admin area in GitLab, is kind of a second class citizen, and I think we can achieve a lot just by looking at it and improving it.
Yeah, and maybe we can improve the audit logs on the group level, because that way it works both for GitLab.com and the self-managed customers.
Yeah, that's what I was exactly going to mention. Sort of it's on the admin API, it's sort of this tension where you want to make sure that our GitLab.com users can benefit from as much of this as possible. But yeah, certainly the admin API is by a number of areas, like the fact that there's not dates and that the API is clearly important as well.
All right, Kenny, number 3.
Yeah, and kudos to you, Scott. I think since you've joined, and the slide shows, we've had a major ramp up in our hiring of the PM team. We seem to have caught up. I know there's an OKR around hiring for Q3. We're, I think, on track to catch up through the course of this year, but I did want to get your thoughts on hiring of PMs relative to next year's investment. Should we try to hire those earlier than we did this year, as kind of new teams begin to form in the development? But how do you think about relative timing of hiring for PMs versus development teams?
My take is we probably want to be about a quarter ahead in hiring the PM. I think we've seen a couple of examples where we're further ahead of that. Not very many. In most cases, we were way behind, but in some cases, we were further ahead. And the PM, I think, I just feel like about a quarter is enough time for the PM to ramp up, start to get a point of view on what to do. Then you start surrounding that person with engineering and design, and off we go. That feels like about the right amount of lead time. I don't know if that answered your question, but
it does. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, GitLab flow for, is that as infrastructure as code?
Yeah.
Sri, do you want to voice that over?
Hey, sorry, I was speaking on mute. Okay, so I have a question that is kind of related to a customer case, but I'll try to just avoid any specific information. And I want the product team's opinion on this. It's a fairly large enterprise customer, and they want to use Terraform. And my recommendation to them is that at a group level, you work with, you write all your scripts for the provisioning of the infrastructure, and then any project that is created at that level can include it. And then basically they start a new project and you have the infrastructure that is provisioned right away. But I do feel, so this is going to be kind of my recommendation, but I just wanted to check if this is how we see the GitLab flow when it comes to provisioning infrastructure as well, or if somebody can point me in the right direction.
Victor is on the call. He's our product manager covering IAC. I'm thinking through a couple of case studies that I've seen where we've highlighted examples of infrastructure as code use cases by our customers. One was a blog that we wrote about Ansible. There are a couple that I can send you. What you described, I'm not sure would necessarily be our recommended approach. Typically, we see, like, one way you could do it is you could share CI templates that could be included in each project. That is one method. I didn't know if that was what you were describing in the group one.
Yeah, so that is what I was,
okay.
My idea was to create these templates at the group level, and whoever starts a new project within that group can just include them to get their infrastructure provisioned, as long as they pass in the right variables. So that's going to be my approach. I just wanted that checked with somebody who was.
Yeah, there are some other approaches where the infrastructure itself has like a project that defines the infrastructure, and you run a pipeline and adjustments to the definition of that infrastructure in the project itself, and the pipeline then deploys the infrastructure. So yeah, I can send you some case studies where different users have done different methods. Victor, I don't know if we have what we consider the gold standard documented somewhere, or a preferred method documented somewhere.
So there is no GitLab flow sorry.
No, hi, I'm Victor, the product manager of infrastructure as code. We don't have GitLab flow like recommended way of doing it.
Right, thank you.
So I'll look up, while others are talking, I'll look up those case studies and add them to this doc tree. And then I think we'd obviously love to talk to that customer to learn more about their specific needs.
All right, thanks.
Cool.
All right, Sherry, over to you.
Oh, I think the previous question already answered some of my questions. I'm used to work with the enterprise where we have to write specific scripts to provision base stack, VPC, VPNs, and database stack. It's like it's orchestrated steps to set up the infrastructure and environment, and we'll have to set a bunch of lower environments like dev, testing, pre-prod, production. It's quite tedious and difficult to maintain. And some steps are difficult to roll back if there's a problem. For example, in Amazon, if there's a S3 bucket problem, you have to physically go and delete. So it sounded like our product can support that through like a project and create steps in CI/CD. But there is no defined recommend flow or approach we could use, or is there a plan to, out of the box, there's something we can leverage to set up the infrastructure easily? I'm a little bit all over the map. I'm just trying to digest what.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember from our product's perspective, our first-class citizen is deploying to Kubernetes. And so we have lots of tools to attach a Kubernetes cluster and deploy your applications directly to that Kubernetes cluster to share that cluster across multiple projects. But we don't have as much like kind of base primitives other than the standard infrastructure as code practices for non-Kubernetes deployments.
Okay.
I'm adding some examples from blog posts and case studies where users have used our source control and CI to perform infrastructure as code tasks. I think those will give you some examples of how you can use our current tools, but we're also investing in new product capabilities to make that flow easier.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Philippe, over to you.
Yeah, not really a question, just a comment on slide 17. You are mentioning category maturity, and there is a link to the maturity page, but when we browse that page, there is no link to epics or issues. So it's actually hard to figure out what does it mean to move from viable to minimum to viable, for example. And I think that we have epics for every single one of them. So is there a way we can link that?
Are you, let me copy in a
sure.
link here. So here's a maturity page link. If you go to that, it's got high level definitions of what each stage means. Just want to make sure you've seen that. Are you asking for each specific category to also link to details about how we achieved it?
There are epics created for many of the transitions. And so I think the ask is, can we link those since we have them, or where we do have them?
Exactly, just that.
Okay. So link from the Harvey balls, perhaps, or?
Let me just share my screen real quick to explain what I mean. So this is the maturity for secure, and we see here that license compliance is going to move from minimal here, we don't have maturity, with minimal here to viable here. So I wanted to understand exactly what are we going to achieve here to consider that viable. And actually we have an epic for that, which is, that's not this one, but it's right there in the, it's right here. So if we could just add a link on this small tip just to this epic so that we can understand, oh, actually we have this to do by the end of February and it's going to be considered viable. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you link it from the title? So for, issue tracking or Kanban boards, or would you link from the Harvey balls where it changes?
I agree with you, but we are sharing these pages with customers. So that's why I'm telling you that.
I would say, yeah, the Harvey balls.
Link it to the Harvey ball where it changes.
Yeah, you need multiple links. You can't just rely on one if you have multiple stages to progress through.
Okay, it's a good idea.
There's also one example in the plan where the roadmaps category links to the strategy page, and the strategy page should theoretically have all of the epics that are upcoming too. So that's another option.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the direction pages. I think we give guidance that you should have your maturity plans linked on the direction page to the specific epics. So you could link, like in that example, the category to the categories direction page.
There you go. That'd be more durable. Feels like those links get out of date pretty quickly. Okay. Thanks for the suggestion, Philippe. Other questions? All right. Sounds like we're good for today. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it.